Testament lesson this morning is from the book of Genesis, chapter 1, and all 7 days. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light." And there was light, and God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome and separated from the waters, and that were above the dome, and it was so. God called the dome sky, and there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together in one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seed of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be there for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky and to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves of every kind with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, "Let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, and wild animals of the earth of every kind." And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth." So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created them.
A great job taking us through all of creation in 5 minutes, Ms. Tace. Good job. That's very commendable. Next reading is from James chapter 3, verses 1 through 12. So let us once again listen for God's word. "My brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers, because we know that we teachers will be judged more strictly. We all make mistakes often, but those who don't make mistakes with their words have reached full maturity. Like a bridled horse, they can control themselves entirely. When we bridle horses and put bits in their mouths to lead them wherever we want, we can control their whole bodies. Consider ships. They are so large that strong winds are needed to drive them, but pilots direct their ships wherever they went with a little rudder. In the same way, even though the tongue is a small part of the body, it boasts wildly. But think about this. A small flame can set a whole forest on fire. The tongue is a small flame of fire, a world of evil at work in us that contaminates our entire lives. Because of it, the circle of life is set on fire. The tongue itself is set on fire by the flames of hell. People can tame and already have tamed every kind of animal, bird, reptile, and fish. But no one can tame the tongue, though. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. With it we both bless the Lord and Father and curse human beings made in God's likeness. A blessing and cursing come from the same mouth. My brothers and sisters, it just shouldn't be this way. Both fresh water and salt water don't come from the same spring, do they? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree produce olives? Can a grapevine produce figs? Of course not. And fresh water doesn't flow from a saltwater spring either. But this is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So for our sermon series for August, we're going to be doing the Four Agreements, a book by Don Miguel Ruiz. And this week we're starting with being impeccable with your word. But before we dive into that, it's probably helpful to know what an agreement actually is and what that kind of implies. So it's a little complicated. I'll try to break it down to simple terms so we can all understand and grasp what exactly an agreement is, since we'll be doing 4 of these throughout August. So an agreement is something that you agree with, right? I know you don't use the word to define it, but I'll break it down even further than that. So as a child, we're born and we don't get really many choices, do we? We don't choose what religious or moral values we have. We don't choose what language we're going to grow up speaking, right? But we don't choose our name, and we don't choose what we might believe. So as a child, we're not making these decisions. Someone's making these decisions for us. Someone's saying, you're going to speak this language, you're going to believe in this, you're going to do this, and you're going to act this certain way. So we agree with this information that we're fed or given by our parents, our mentors, our teachers, our peers, or what have you. So once we agree with it, then we believe it. And that's what Mr. Ruiz refers to as faith. So he claims to have faith is to believe unconditionally, and that's how we learn as children. Children believe everything adults say, at least mostly. My kids learn that I like to joke a little bit, so sometimes they're a little hesitant to believe what I say sometimes. But for the most part, we as children believe what adults tell us. So children agree with what's said to them, and our faith is so strong and our belief systems are shaped so tightly with the world around us that we have an agreement with that, we believe that, and that's where our faith comes up. And that's where we build this foundation for us as an adult and as a person growing and moving forward. So perhaps we do not agree with everything that we're maybe told, and maybe there's some little hesitance there, so we push back, right? We rebel against what people tell us or what they feed us. But sometimes they tell us so frequently, or it's so powerful that we just can't push back against it. And then we believe it, and it's kind of in our core and in our heart, and it's there to stay for years and years. So it's in that space where we surrender and just kind of relent, and we agree with what people tell us to believe and what we should follow with going forward. So that's how we shape ourselves, our morals, how we perceive other people around us, even just the world at large. So basically speaking, agreements are where we agree with what we are told and eventually fully believe those and live those beliefs and truths out in our life. So today, we've got being impeccable with your word. So Mr. Ruiz begins the chapter with this statement. He says the first agreement is the most important one and also the most difficult one to honor. It's so important that with just this first agreement, you will be able to transcend to the level of existence he calls heaven on earth. So he feels so strongly about this, that if we can live into this being impeccable with our word, we can find the presence of heaven and a sense of peace within us in this life here and now. Being impeccable with your word. Now, there are many reasons as to why Mr. Ruiz feels this is critical to begin here. But he actually gives a decent amount of scriptural reasoning and accounts for it. As we read, Ms. Tay said from Genesis, did you happen to notice how God created? God didn't do a little Harry Potter waving of the wand and say, oh, let this come into be, presto magico, there you go. Oh. He said words, right? Just set it into being and breathe life into the world. So through our words we create. Through God's words, life and this world and we all came into being through God saying and speaking those words. In fact, if you look at Mark's gospel, it begins there with in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God. Words are strong. Words are very powerful. They can build us up or tear us down all at the same time. And then we get to James. The reading that we had from this morning, chapter 3, verses 1 through 12, we clearly see the power and destructive nature that words can run. And James even knew this. This is why he addressed it in his letter. By saying it can cause great fires. We can bless the Lord and we can curse the Lord with the same tongue. And we can hurt people deeply with our words. And that's how powerful and deep and far-reaching those words can go. So being impeccable with one's word might sound like kind of a challenge or a confusing sort of statement. But found within that challenge is an encouragement to have this mental state of being where we have confidence in ourselves and we can be free from negative and poisonous words that we hear from other people. We can kind of build up an immunity from those words if we love and believe in ourselves enough. So then we can have a greater sense of meaning and a deeper sense of purpose in this life. If we love ourselves and know at the end of the day that we are a great person inside and out, we can find a greater sense of happiness and contentment in this life and in this world in general. And so throughout today's message, I'll be giving little examples of how we go about being impeccable with our word and what precisely that might mean and how far-reaching our words can really carry with someone in their life and even in our own. But for starters, it boils down to us thinking to ourselves, do we want our words to be positive and uplifting or negative and ones that tear down and hurt? That's where we have to start. So anytime we say something or speak something, go from that point. Do we want to hurt someone or do we want to help and support and lift someone up? So essentially, do we want to sow seeds of kindness, goodness, and hope in the minds of other people and even ourselves? Or would we prefer to spread the seeds of fear and doubt? That being impeccable with our word means focusing on the goodness and the truth that we can find within those very words. You see, the mind is a very fertile ground, right? So we have to be careful with the seeds that we do and end up sowing within our own hearts and minds and within the hearts and minds of others. So most of us are aware, I know I've said this before, that if someone gives you a negative feedback or critique about something, usually it takes 20 compliments to kind of balance that out, right? So you have to hear 20 good things from people in order to negate one bad comment from someone else. So that means in the course of a day, if you've heard 5 bad things about yourself, you need 100 good things to be said about you to feel okay at the end of the day. That's a lot, right? That's pretty heavy. So just those little words can really impact us and influence us negatively or positively for the rest of the day. So it shows the adverse effect that words can have on us. So similarly to God, we can create with our words. And not to the extent that God created, of course. We can't make worlds and people and creatures come into being. But we can create something in the mind of someone else or in our own mind. We can create a sense of peace, a sense of acceptance or understanding or love and compassion and kindness and joy. Or we can create fear or doubt or someone second-guessing or not really understanding who they are or knowing that they are truly loved at the end of the day. So every chance we have to engage in conversation or use words through any kind of form of communication, we have an opportunity to have positive, uplifting ones or negative, tearing down and bad ones in our life. So when we sow these seeds with our words, we need to be very careful about how we choose to use them and how we choose to say them. So according to Ruiz, 2 of the strongest and most poisonous seeds are fear and doubt. Those are two of the biggest ways that we can hurt people and have them go on this adverse effect of belief in their life, in the world, and everything around. Of course, the ultimate example that Ruiz gave was that of Adolf Hitler and the words he would show regarding how others perceive the Jewish people. right? Sowing seeds of fear and doubt. Causing to fear someone else and saying, we've got to do something about this situation. So this, of course, led to one of the worst atrocities in the modern day world. And true, it's an extreme example, but it just conveys how powerful words can really be and how much they can alter and affect the path of that life, right? Even with my heart aching from all of these mass shootings, I can't help but think that someone somewhere along the way fed someone like that seeds of doubt and fear. To fear or be afraid of someone else, to view them as a threat or someone that shouldn't be around or what have you. So these seeds are continually fed and continue to seep and do so much poison into our life and our culture and our world that we need to find a way to use good, positive seeds and words of love, hope, and compassion. You see, it doesn't just have to be the Adolf Hitlers of the world that can do psychological and emotional damage to others. Another example given in the book, it was this mother who she was a single mom and she had one daughter about the age of 5, and the mom just had the worst day of work in so many recent years. She had a project that fell short. People critiqued her all day long. She developed a migraine around noon, and she was just ready to hit that 5 o'clock time so she could go home, have some tea, and relax. So as she's driving home, kind of weary from her day and her head's still pounding away, she gets inside her house, opens the door, and sees her beautiful little child is singing and dancing around in the living room, singing at the top of her lungs because life is good, right? I'm alive. I love myself. I love acting out. I love living this joyful sense of being that I have. And her mom's headache was still pounding. And she had enough of the singing. So she lashed out at her daughter and said, "Enough, your voice is ugly, stop it right now." And that was a seed that was never undone. The girl lived with that comment for the rest of her life. One little moment of frustration and angst by her mother that caused this daughter to question her voice and say, my mom told me this. I believe it. I agree with it. Maybe I do have an ugly voice. So the girl never sang again. As she was self-conscious at school, socially awkward and just a little bit shy because she felt deep down and agreed that her voice was ugly. From a 3-second comment from her mother having just a bad day. That's how strong our seeds of words really are. So, we have these seeds of fear and doubt that are poisonous and dangerous, as Ms. Ruiz refers to. And he said there's one more form of communication that is extremely destructive. And that is through the method of gossip. So I'd like to know that most of us here believe and understand that gossip is bad, right? Deep down at the end of our day, we know it's not good, we shouldn't do it, we shouldn't listen to it, and we shouldn't encourage it or condone it. But perhaps we don't realize how damaging and deep it can really run. You see, on the surface level, when we say things about others or pass a judgment, we're seeking to build ourselves up at someone else's expense. So we tear someone down to make ourselves feel better, right? And say, oh, can you believe what they did or how they act? Every time they have a sandwich, they have to put mayonnaise, ketchup, and horseradish on it. What are they doing? They're so crazy, right? Even just little things. Or we tear someone down to make ourselves feel better. What benefit is there in that? We shouldn't have to tear other people down to feel good about ourselves. We shouldn't have to pass judgment on someone else in order to paint a better picture of ourselves in our own mind. You see, not only does it do a disservice to the other person, but it also places us in a position of constant, perpetual comparisons to other people. And we chiefly paint them in a negative light. In fact, James seemed very well of the dangers of the tongue and how much it could negatively impact and influence other people, even ourselves. So some of James' words are very loud and condemning, especially when it proclaims, think about this. A small flame can set a whole forest on fire. The tongue is a small flame of fire. A world of evil at work within us. It contaminates our lives, and because of it, the circle of life is set on fire. So that's just it. When we partake in gossip, we set everything ablaze around us. Our intentions only seem to be that of starting fires and fanning those flames. So once the fire has begun, it's incredibly hard to contain and extinguish. And not only that, but maybe we end up with some burn marks on our hearts from engaging in that form of gossip. So either way, it just seems like a lose-lose situation. To engage in any form or fashion of gossip, as Mr. Ruiz refers to as another poisonous word to use that is not impeccable to us. So it's ultimately detrimental to both the recipient and the judgment they feel from one's mouth, or what they might hear secondhand from someone else. But furthermore, James comments of how we can sow these seeds of doubt and fear, and how it can be long-term or short-term poisoning that takes place within our hearts or the hearts of someone else. He mentions how people can tame and already have tamed every kind of animal and bird and reptile and fish. However, no one can tame the tongue. It's a restless evil full of deadly poison. So with it we both bless the Lord and Father and curse human beings made in God's image. So that's why it's essential that we're impeccable with our words. That's why we must choose carefully the words that we say, both to ourselves and about other people. And that's why we have to ensure that we keep our emotions in check and don't lash out at a friend, a spouse, or especially a child in a brief moment of distress or frustration, as it can certainly have lifelong lasting consequences. You see, nothing can squash someone's self-esteem or joy or love or compassion quicker than the poisonous words of fear, doubt, and gossip. So being impeccable with our word means using words that lift up instead of tearing down, and words that are helpful, honest, and inspiring. And so at the end of the day, we need to be aware of just how strong our word really is, and how much damage it can do, and how much lifting up it can do. Our words are strong, powerful, and exceptionally potent. We have the power to create and instill almost as much as God once did, although not to that extent. It even applies to our own selves too, and this is where it probably starts and matters the most. How do we view ourselves? What do we say to ourselves when we get up in the morning or go throughout the day and we've heard those negative comments? How do we feel about ourselves? You see, how many times have we said to ourselves something like, oh, I look fat, or I look ugly, or I'm getting old, I'm losing my hair, I'm stupid, I never understand anything, I'll never be good enough, I'm never going to be perfect. You see, do you see how that word works against ourselves? Sometimes we start the day just tearing ourselves down. So how can we think to lift other people up if we can't even believe and love ourselves? So in that sense, we should not be so hard and poisonous to ourselves and our own hearts. We need to be good and positive to others, yes, but it starts with us. But don't let those seeds of fear and doubt and gossip continue to burn against yourself when you wake up in the morning, or even against other people. So ultimately, Mr. Ruiz says if we adopt the first agreement and become impeccable with our word, any emotional poison will eventually be cleaned from our mind and from our communication and our personal relationships, including with our pet or our dog. So that's a good gauge to see it, right? Are we saying nice things to little Fluffy when he wake up in the morning? Or saying, oh, you dumb dog, I gotta walk you again, right? Or we say, no, I love you, Fluffy. Let me feed you and count the ways that I love you. Just these small little examples reflects back on where our mindset is, where our heart is, and if we are impeccable with our word or not. So gauge from the pets. Gauge from ourselves. Do we love ourselves? Do we view ourselves as beautiful, as smart, as nice, as friendly, as welcoming? Or do we view ourselves in even a negative light? So additionally, Ruiz firmly believes that us having impeccability with our word will give us immunity from anything, putting anything negative upon us from someone else. So we will only receive a negative idea if our mind is fertile ground for it. See, when we're impeccable with our word, our mind is no longer fertile ground for words that are negative in nature. That stuff doesn't bother us. It doesn't affect us. It doesn't impact us if we don't have that fertile ground of just open seed saying, you're free to sow whatever you want in my mind. You can sow seeds of fear or doubt or hatred, but they're not going to stick because I love myself. And I'm a great and wonderful person. So we can talk at the end of the day, and I'll lift you up all I can, but I know I'm the one that matters, and my life is important, and I love myself. So we can measure the impeccability of our word by our level of self-love. Now, how much do we love ourselves, and how much do we feel positive about ourselves at the end of the day? How good do we feel? You see, when we're impeccable with our word, we feel good. We feel happy and we feel at peace. So we need to earnestly ask ourselves, do I love myself? And if so, how much? You see, if our love of self is so low, then we need to begin working on being impeccable with our word and saying good things about ourselves. So that means if we engage in gossip, maybe we don't love ourselves as much as we thought we did. If we're intent on sowing seeds of fear and doubt, maybe we're still stricken with those same seeds in our fertile minds. So Mr. Ruiz likes to tell others to say, I am impeccable with my word, and then he has them repeat it. So we're going to say it together as a congregation 3 times with me, okay? I know you guys can do the response thing, so we'll do it together. So let's join. First time, I am impeccable with my word.
I am impeccable with my word.
Oh, good. A response. That's good. Okay, one more time. I am impeccable with my word. I am impeccable with my word. Very good. So now we've got that established. We're going to say another thing 2 times in a row. So I want you to say, I love myself, okay? We'll say that together. I love myself. I love myself. You see, don't you already feel good? A small little thing. Small words that we can say to ourselves to build ourselves and our self-esteem and our love for self up. So that's the benefit we can have in shedding all the previous agreements that we've made with ourselves or others have taught us along the way. So by doing so, we find more freedom, we find more success in life. We begin to love ourselves and grow in our confidence and self-esteem, and at the end of the day, we view the world through a much better lens. A lens of love, of acceptance, of lacking judgment, and with a greater sprinkling of hope, faith, and compassion. But it starts from within. So that if we were a child and someone told us our voice was ugly, hopefully we have learned by now that our voice is not ugly. That we are smart. We have a beautiful voice. We matter. Our life is important because that's what God wants us to know about ourselves. Our life matters. So we must remember how powerful our words are to ensure that we intentionally use them wisely. And that we truly, deeply love ourselves at the end of each and every day.